Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and we have a super special episode of the Lightforge this week. Very special guest who is number one on the February NA leaderboards, crushed everyone.
Would you say that he's numero uno?
Look, I can't have title to that anymore. It's been too long, and my results have been too bad. But also winner of 2016 DreamHack Austin and meme lord extraordinaire, we got Chakki. Thank you, Chakki, for coming on.
What up?
So Chakki, how's it feel to be number one, man?
Feels pretty good. Kind of just started out as a fun thing that I did on my stream, and 30 runs later, it was pretty try hard, and I got number one, so it's great.
There you go, guys. That's it. It's so easy. Just in the span of
People always ask us. It's like, how long did it take until you got like infinite in an arena? It's like, oh well, you can just be like Chakki. You don't have to touch it for like years, and then come back and be number one by like one win per run on top of that, like a huge margin too.
All right. So Chakki, let me ask. Like, we know you as a constructed player, and we know you also as a caster. I have personally listened to a lot of your expert casting in many tournaments, but I don't think many people before this leaderboard knew that you even played arena. I certainly did not. So like, do you have a history? Like, did you play?
No, not really. I played like some arena way back, like when it only went to 9 wins.
Wow. Prehistoric.
Wow. Yeah, like I got like a 9-0 in that, and then I'd actually never had a 12-0 run before last month. so that was one thing I wanted to do. I got that on my 3rd run in like the try hard series, and that's still my only 12-0. But yeah, I think like lifetime I had probably like 400 to 500 arena wins over the course of 3 years. I never really did it seriously. Of course, there was never really a reason to. So this whole leaderboard thing was kind of a fun challenge, and it honestly all started out as like a joke to beat Crip, show him who's boss.
Well, I
you
think
certainly
you did
that. So yeah, like what? Why? Like what? It just seems so random. Like everything about this, you're just like, oh yeah, I just decided to attempt it. I mean, all right, the result is like out of left field, but also just you trying this seems to be from out of left field.
I've really been disappointed with like constructed, and I knew that wasn't something I wanted to do last month, but I still wanted to play Hearthstone and like stream stuff. So I just played some arena runs. I did really well, so I kept playing arena runs, and yeah, just went for 30 for the leaderboard. I'm kind of like a challenge driven person, so the fact that they finally added like, even if it's just like getting your name on a blog post, it's like, sweet, I did it.
I loved it. I remember seeing your tweet the day of its coronation day, and then getting that blog post, man. But yeah, no, I think this is exactly what we wanted from the leaderboard, right, ADWCTA?
Yeah, that's what was exciting about it. When the leaderboard came out, and it was in the middle of a month. It was in the middle of January, and so like a couple of people did it that we wouldn't expect, but generally it was really for like people who are already playing a lot of arenas. But once you have it, it's now a real thing. Even if there's no like, there's no like points for BlizzCon or like anything like that, it's now a thing that's going to be there forever, right? Like you can search yourself up on, on this thing 2 years from now, and it'll still say, in a February, Chakki number one with that number. And if arena gets harder, like maybe that number, it will remain like one of the top all-time scores ever, because you don't know which way the meta is going to move. It could get like, I think right now it's significantly more difficult to get like a high average in 7.1 than it was before. If I like, I don't know, maybe you guys can confirm, but that it feels like it's trending in that direction. So like the leaderboard, it makes things official, and you get that blog post, and I'm really happy that we get these constructed refugees, right? Like almost. Where it's like, why did you come here? Oh, the constructed meta, right? Like we got into that point where it's just Pyro Warrior all the time, and now you can do other things with this game.
In like 400 games, there were no patches and there were no Renos. It was great.
Wow.
There are a few Kazakus, but that's fine.
Wait. Let me ask you. Do you play Arena in 7.1, in patch 7.1? Are you still playing?
I haven't played a single run this month.
Because you see those all the time.
Yeah, I was about to
now.
say, this was definitely more of a February thing than a March thing.
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you, I have lost so often to. There was one game where I ran into Ice Block, Reno into Kazakis. I was just like,
Wait,
all right,
was that the guy that posted to Reddit today?
No, this was like
That was just a
week
totally
ago.
separate guy.
This stuff just happens now.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, that's a normal deck.
Yeah, I've been Arch Thief Reformed into what was it? Oh yeah, into like Archmage Antonitis, and then I think there was like a third legendary in there as well. This is arena now. So this is what I want to ask. I was just like, what have you been playing this month? Like, what do you think about it? But anyways,
well, I played a little bit, like not on my account. I just played with some people at PAX, and like, I don't know if their deck's pretty good or anything, but it's like it's so slow now.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah,
it's all value. I don't like it. It's like that might just be my personal bias, so I don't know.
No, I think that definitely fits sort of I guess the 2-minute summary of Chakki, right? Like early on in your career, you're definitely known as sort of a very aggressive player. I think that people definitely changed their view, like as they saw you in more tournaments, as they saw you as a caster. But is that sort of how you played Arena, like really favoring like the aggressive style?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I was just trying to win at all points, but I think like something that's really successful in Arena that people don't really go for too much, especially on the old patch, was, I mean, everybody knows you can just kind of curve out, but it's like you can just go face and like draft in a way. It's kind of funny, like the less burn you draft, I feel like the more aggressive you have to play. It's like weird. It's weird in that way where because your deck's so bad, you just have to kind of go face, hope they have no answers, and get there somehow. And I feel like that's how I got a lot of like my 7 through 9 win runs with like kind of mediocre decks. It's just like, you know, if your high curve's really bad, you really just have to hope that you win on turn 2 through 5 and you curve out better than them and get some chip damage in, just beat people up. And then late game, it doesn't really matter how much value they have if you have 5 minions out and they can't clear them all.
Yeah. It's God, it seems so long ago, but
right now I'm in the 7.1 mindset, but where they will have answers if you try to do that with like, you know, a non like hunter deck. But it is that's been the Arena, and it took people, like, what surprised me was it really did take people almost an entire year, and like not until really like middle of Nax or when GVG released did a lot of even purely Arena players or predominantly Arena players start shifting more towards this realization that you can rescue bad decks by going aggro. Just by drafting the 2-drops. Just by drafting some random crappy 1-drops, making sure you have all your curve, because your opponents don't curve out as much. Whereas you can't do the opposite. You can't save a bad deck by just pumping it full of like 7/7s and 8/8s, because you're dead by then. Even if you technically have a bigger deck than your opponent that has more like value and tempo cards, right? With the Azure Drakes or like whatever. You can't like really outsize them, but you can out aggro them with similarly low, like lowly ranked kind of cards.
yeah. So Chakki, how like did you have a certain play style, or did you have like a lot of classes that you specifically favor?
Oh yeah,
like,
what's your class distribution? Like, how would you rank the classes before 7.1?
I like started out kind of wanting to hear other people's opinions, like researching it, seeing what other people thought, and then I think I sort of landed on like what I accepted as like the actual tier list. So it was Warlock #1. That's like no question whatsoever.
Yeah.
One thing I also look at is like not only how much do I win, but how much do I lose against this class. And like Warlock, my win rate was really low against. Like it turns out it doesn't really matter how good you are at playing Warlock. The class is just like insane on the old patch at least. And it still is pretty good, I guess. But that was like #1 by far. #2 was probably just Rogue. So I drafted Warlock, and then if I couldn't get Warlock, I would take Rogue. That was 21 of my 30 runs were just those 2 classes.
Nice.
Third, I decided I liked Paladin the best. I only got 3 runs of it, but it was also my second lowest win rate against that class. So I felt like maybe it's like the way I draft or something, or the way I play, but it was not succeeding against Paladin. And then Similarly, Paladin was tied for my second highest win rate. So I was like, this just seems really good. Crypt's stats were very similar. Like his second lowest win rate was against Paladin. His like third highest win rate was with Paladin. But Paladin seemed to be a class that a lot of people are like, it's like fourth or fifth. Mm-hmm. I noticed a lot of people still put a lot of faith in like Mage, but honestly, I didn't see data to back that up. Like Crypt's Mage win rate was really low. My win rate against Mage was insane. Like maybe it's just because these people are drafting really value and I was going more aggro, but I went Paladin number 3, and then from there, it kind of doesn't really matter because usually your draft picks are so easy. I think I had one tough pick, which was between Priest and Mage, and I sort of flip-flopped between those two. They seemed really close to me. But I would say probably Priest 4th, Mage 5th, and then Hunter 6th, Shaman 7th, and then, of course, you never pick Druid or Warrior, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's pretty close to our list. We did have Mage a little bit higher up there, right?
Yeah, I'm a Mage loyalist. The win rate against Mage is always going to be good because that's the tutorial hero, and it's not like the constructed ladder where you end up facing against good players all the time. You're still going to face a good amount of times against people who don't really know what they're doing, and they're going to be they're going to pick Mage much more frequently than any other class. So that's not going to be there. But like your win rate, they did level Mage off a lot more. It was kind of interesting to watch Blizzard like take Mage down a peg, right? Like slowly over the course of like a bunch of different changes from like the Karazhan days. It's definitely not like a dominant class anymore. It's somewhere near the top is I think most people's thinking about it, and maybe we are like slow to adjust. I know I keep thinking Mage is better than probably how it actually is, but I'm also just super comfortable with it at this point.
Yeah,
I think Blizzard has definitely look. They kept on giving Mage like good cards after good cards, and it got terrible during the Babbling Book Firelands Portal meta, right? Like that was just way too much, and I think they learned, and now they're just like, no, we're gonna give you like cryomancers and freezing potions, no more Firelands portals, no more Babbling Books. So I think we're gonna see this for a little bit, and it's like the new cards that have come out for the Mage as well. It's like fairly unspectacular, right? But I think it's really interesting that
I like the new cards that have come out. Chakki, have you seen the new cards that have come out for Mage?
It's like the deal 2 summon an elemental.
Yeah, so there's that elemental card that I don't really know how good it is until you saw it.
There's good River Crocodile.
Yeah, right. Look at that River Croc. Look at it's called Arcanologist. I really have no idea how to pronounce this.
Yeah. Look at that card.
Look at this card, man. It's a 2-mana 2/3 with a battle cry. Draw a secret from your deck. What?
Oh.
How? That's so OP.
So OP. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just drooling at that value. Who needs mad scientists, right? Oh gosh. But yeah, I think that the days of the Firelands portals with Babbling Book, with Medivh's Valet, like those are done. At least for a while. Maybe a year from now we'll complain about Mage, but I thought what was really interesting was you sort of quickly identified Rogue as your second best class. Like I don't think there's any question that Warlock was the best, but you as just sort of a very good Hearthstone player generally went to Rogue. And I think we've said for a long time, like Rogue is the class that gives you the most options in the early game, right? And if you're a good player and if you have the most options, that's how you increase your win rate. Like sometimes, with Dagger, with like the cheap spells and Jade Shurikens, Deadly Poisons, the Buccaneer, you just have so many plays in the early game and you just like snowball into victories. Like, was that how you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, Rogue was just kind of like, looking at other people's tier list. It was always really highly rated. I started trying it. It's a very naturally aggressive class. Like you want to get a low curve, you kind of top out 6, 7-ish, rather than playing like responding to your opponent's threat with your own. You just like sap it or something and keep going face. It was just a class that really naturally fit my play style. It was really powerful, continued to like prove itself in my runs. I think I did have a 4-win run with it, but it was just like a really bad draft. I don't think it was anything wrong with the class. So I just kept picking Rogue when it was available. I only had like 2 tough rogue picks where it was like, do I take rogue or paladin? And basically I would just check my win rate, and rogue was pretty much always it ended up being the exact same win rate as paladin, but over a larger sample size. So yeah, rogue just performed well. It was a very aggressive class, and that was kind of what I wanted.
I think that's fair. By the way, and I need to go on this tangent because I read about this and need to confirm. Apparently, they're like almost like a meme was created with the Paladin Grime Street Protector, like the 7-mana 6/6 taunt or something. Like what's this about?
I don't think I beat that card for the first like 25 runs. Like, let me look at how many losses I had against Paladin. I mean, I only lost like 9 times against Paladin overall, but I'm pretty sure all 9 of those were to them having that card on 7. And then I drafted it, and I kept winning with it. The card had a 100% win rate for like both sides. And then in like the last day, I was in a really dominating spot, and I was like taunting my opponent to play it. That way I could finally beat it. And he did play it, but he also played like a heal. And then I had a 50-50 juggle to win. I miss. I put my opponent to 1. I'm rogue, so it's like, okay, you're dead. And then he top decked another taunt, and I lost. And then I was very defeated. And then the very next game, different guy, I beat the card finally. So.
Oh, so there's a happy ending here.
Yeah.
I was about to say, that's really sad that it still has a 100% win rate on both sides.
Right. So only like a 97% win rate.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Card's okay.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense as well. Like basically what you're saying is it sort of backs up sort of what we think of the meta, or sorry, what we thought of the old meta. This is nothing to do with 7.1 and the clown fiesta that is the arena now. But with paladins, like it's so easy to lose to them, especially just because there's not much you could do. It's like, do they get that turn 1 Smuggler's Run? Do they get that turn 2 Grime Street Outfitter? And then I refer to the paladin playstyle in this patch as solitaire. Like they're not doing they're not like putting out stuff so much to interact with your board. They're just like putting something out, and it's almost like a boss battle, right? Like they put something out and they're like, deal with it. And
the final boss is the Grime Street Protector.
Unless they drafted Tyrion, and then you're just screwed. But...
yeah. Oh, you see that a lot in the arena now.
Yeah, Tyrion's.
God, how many times have I gone into turn 8? I'm like, you know what? It's too early for Deathwing. I think we win against every other card except, and then the and just goddamn.
No, and it makes sense because especially if you're like an aggressive style, like you try to draft Chakki, and then you get a 6/6 taunt that is usually played when your opponent already still has something on the board, and that gets a Divine Shield with even extra value. Like you were in a great position to start, and then you get like your nemesis, like the last thing you want to see, a giant taunt that gets extra value because it's an insanely valued card. Like that makes sense. That seems like a card that's like designed to give your playstyle trouble.
Yeah, it's like normally around turn 6 is like exactly the time I just want to be going face, setting up lethal, and it's like that card. It's like kind of want to trade, but it's like trading so bad. And it's the one card that punishes you. Like I don't care if they like kings it, but yeah.
Right. All right. So basically, you went ahead. You just like crushed everyone. Like there was a big gap between like.
What's the exact like win after they updated it and made the numbers better?
8.93 repeating.
8.93. Basically in the 9-win club.
Yeah, I got really unlucky on my last 2 runs. I was at like 9.32 over 28, and then I just bombed 2 runs. It was really sad, but
we were getting like run-by-run updates from like our chat about your progress because it was like so like out of left field and so ridiculously high.
Everybody thought I was either like, first it was like, oh, he's not actually gonna do 30 runs, and then it's like, oh, the average will go down, and it like kept going up. Like I started out lower than my finish, and it just kept going up, and people were like, it'll go down, and it just never did. Like it just finished.
I mean, it's just such a such a astronomical feat. I don't know. I think it's like how last year, like Steph Curry, like no one had made 300 3-pointers in a season, and then he broke 400 3-pointers. This is kind of like, it's just, you're just like, oh, I'll just walk into the arena. Obviously, you are a tippy top tier Hearthstone player, like just generally like very good player, but you weren't very aware of the arena, and you just came in. You're just like, yeah,
Yeah, it's a
easy
different, it's a
#1
limited
NA.
format. It's still not constructed. It's not even like there's another limited format Chakki's been playing, because there
Right.
not another limited format in Hearthstone. So yeah, that's like like very quick and very good like adapting, right? And like one, it's not like, oh, you decided you were going to be an arena player too, and then you know like learned for a month, and then you got it on your second month because you're really quick at adapting. This is like just right off the bat. And we've seen it before, right? This isn't the first time a constructed player kind of like started playing arena for the heck of it and then did something ridiculous, right? Remember Two Beers from last year and the 110 challenge?
Yeah, I remember that.
Like,
And 2 beers. Let's see. He doesn't even play arena anymore. Like, is this what's gonna happen? Constructed players come kick our asses, and then they're like, okay, we're done with you.
It's been there, done that. Yeah. I mean, I kind of want to do it again. This month wasn't optimal because I was like flying, and the meta's changing like next month anyway, so I figured I'd just wait. But Trump's been doing pretty well, and man, I really want to just like queue up 30 runs, show him who's boss again, be like, sit down, Trump. But it'll be interesting to see if like Trump's on pace for over 9 right now. So
Wow, how many runs is he at?
I think like 14. So yeah, I mean, everybody said like when I was at that point, they're like, oh, it'll go down. It's like really easy to just assume that they got lucky for the first half. But it's like, I don't know, maybe like this meta seems like it would favor like how he plays. So.
yeah. This is
Definitely.
this is definitely like, it goes back even farther to how he plays than back in Classic, right? When he was like at the very top of his arena game. So that's really cool. And that's March, and then you'll be back hopefully in April.
We'll see.
Because there are so many like professional, like Hearthstone players, and they're all constructed because that's like where all the action is. That's where most of the interest is, and it's to be a professional, you do need to get paid, and that's where that's where the tournaments are. So there's a whole pool of the top players of Hearthstone, and they are not playing the arena, or at least like not playing the arena in any even somewhat serious fashion.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really curious what would happen if they all started just like playing arena 1 month for like, I don't know, some random challenge to see how they are on the leaderboard. Like, is everybody going to be like 9 wins per run? Like, part of me is like just really scared that I'm actually like not a great arena player, and it's just that the actual pros are not playing arena. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, all right, 7.5 is fine. I really should be getting 8 wins per run. But like, there's a whole professional class of people out there being like, oh yeah, 8.9 wins is like a first shot kind of thing, and 9.5 is really where it's at. And if I'm doing well, probably like 10, maybe 11 wins per run.
Yeah, I mean, it was always something like people thought about, and I mean, it's really arrogant to just be like, be a pro player and be like, oh, if I played arena, I'd like dunk on those guys. So that's why I didn't like say I was gonna win or anything. It's like if it happens, it happens. But I think a lot of constructed players would do really well. Some wouldn't, I guess. But overall, if you're good at Hearthstone, you're good at Hearthstone. Kind of. The fact that it's still the same game. You have to learn like all these new kind of like frequencies. Basically, it's like in constructed, you're used to how often they'll have something. That definitely changes in arena, and what they have changes as well. You kind of are like, okay, well, they could have, a 4/3 or like just these things that don't happen in constructed. You're like thinking about 1 4-drop on 4, but in arena, you're like, okay, it could be any of these things. And in general, that leads you to just ignore everything and go face.
Yes.
But yeah, I think like there's definitely some constructed players that do well in arena, and hopefully now with the new leaderboard and stuff, that'll kind of give them the incentive to actually try, do 30 runs, and see how high they can get.
Yeah, definitely. So I think a good, like what really opened my eyes was so Hafu sometimes does co-ops with constructed players, right? And I've seen her co-ops with like Fire. She did a co-op with Firebat. She did a co-op with Life Coach as well. And in those co-ops, I could definitely sort of see the differences in sort of thought process. And so I think some of the things that takes a while for constructed players to adjust is also just sort of like how much synergy you can get, right? Because constructed decks, it's like the deck is extremely tight. Like every card synergizes with every other card to go into this one very powerful win condition. But sometimes in Arena, you just have to draft a Hobgoblin with with nothing. It's just, you just got to draft a Hobgoblin.
That one synergy card that you wait every game so that you can pair with your Hobgoblin.
You're waiting for the dream, the turn 4 Hobgoblin Argent Squire to carry you to victory. But yeah, so that's something I see. Like there's a little bit of difference in terms of, maybe thinking that a card is better or a little bit worse than what I think it should be. And then something else that I think constructed players do better is just like, you guys analyze board states extremely quickly, because I think that is one of past sort of meta knowledge and deck analysis and sort of that sort of memorization. It's a lot of just like situational, like, evaluating the situation at hand. And I think for us Arena players, a lot of times, we have to, we're thinking of like a million things, and we don't process the board as fast as like the pro constructed players do. That's just sort of my.
Are you sure it's not just like you and me
yeah,
who don't process that very? Are you sure this is like an Arena players thing?
Well, I mean, it's also just sort of yeah, it's probably just us.
I'm like, this sounds like something that's just like us, and not like, let's not lump all the other Arena players into this.
Yeah. It's like, let's not put this on Hafu or Rats or Shady. It's like, no, this is just us, and I'm willing to accept it. It's all right. It's all right. Thank you guys for being here and helping me work through this issue. I appreciate it. But so Chakki, you came in. You crushed it, and during this rampage, this demolition of the arena, I had heard that, like in your research, you looked up, some tier lists. You definitely did your research. My question is, I guess, in your research and looking at sort of these tier lists, what sort of cards did you rate differently, right? Like, was there anything that you looked at and the Arena community was like, no, I think this card is good, you're like, no, that's bad? Or the Arena community said, this card is bad, and you're like, no, that's awesome, I just get to go face with it?
Well, at the beginning, there was definitely some stuff I was like really surprised was good. And like at first, I just kind of went with the tier list, learned my own opinions on things. But like the first card that I was like, what? Like was Karakazam. And like the tier list says, oh, that's pretty good. Like both tier lists say it's above average. I'm like, this card's like a joke, right? But then you kind of think about it and you're like, okay, well, it's a decent amount of stats, but like really the hidden power in it is specifically in Warlock. It sets up for like Dread Infernal and Abyssal so well, compared to just like a regular 5-drop, because you get to dictate where your trades go. And also if you're playing aggressively, there's like the synergy with Councilman, but just besides that on its own, your opponent can't trade into 3 things at once. So if you're just trying to smork them down, like Karakazam is one of the least interactable cards, especially because in the old arena, there was like no AoE. So there were definitely cards like that where I was like, huh, like in Constructed, you see these cards get revealed and you're like, well, you don't even like think about them. You don't even think like, oh, that's bad. You're just like, another unplayable card. Because Constructed's really black and white. It's like either a card works and you want like 2 of it, or it's a tech card and sometimes you want 1, or it's unplayable. And in Arena, it's like there's a lot of different levels. Like the fact that there are all these tier lists and they have to go into like excruciating detail. You spend potentially hours thinking about whether one card is better than another, and these situations actually come up. It's like it's pretty cool, honestly, compared to Constructed, in which deck building isn't really a skill anymore. Especially like you go to build your Jade Druid deck, It's,
Yeah.
like it's pretty set in stone. You know, you're just putting in Jades. But I would say, like, I mean, the tier lists, they have to be pretty, you know, all-inclusive because they don't know what you've been drafting. Hearth Arena obviously tries to go with synergies, but then kind of ends up overrating your synergies a lot, was something I noticed. And then Lightforge, obviously, your tier list, like, you don't have synergies, so you're just, like, on its own, which card is just all around the most powerful.
Right.
I mean, I would say, like, I agreed with it a lot of times, but basically, I think the main thing is you just have to look at your draft.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, like, one controversial pick I had was I picked, like, Curator over Arc Thief for Fom and Warlock. I didn't even have too aggressive of a deck, and I had no synergy with the Curator at the time. I was just like, you know, it's basically a question of, like, there's two scenarios in which either of these matters. So there's, like, you either win the game and you didn't need to play either of them, and then it's like the pick doesn't matter, or the game gets to turn 7+ and you're able to play either of these. And so the two scenarios are like, okay, the Curator scenario is it's turn 7 or 8. You can't play the other option, and you can play Curator, so it's better. It's turn 7+ and you need a taunt to live, and then Curator's better.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Arc Thief scenario where it's like it's turn 9+, you're in a super value game, and it gives you just enough value to win, more so than the Curator would have. And Curator was like quite a bit lower on the list. I had no synergy. It makes like no sense. And I was just like, I feel like with the deck I had, the more likely scenario is I'm like dying to a hunter and I need a taunt. I felt like with Warlock, going Curator plus Life Tap is like plenty of value in value matchups. And like Warlock, I felt like I never got outvalued, like no matter what.
So something interesting is, I mean, our tier list right now actually has Curator above Archthief Rafam by like very little points, by like, you know, like 6 points. But either something changed with the change with the new meta would actually make Archthief and Rafam like raise a couple points. So I think we do this thing in Warlock where we actually like we penalize those big things exactly because of what you're talking about, where, you know, when it's like 9 mana or 10 mana or whatever, it just gets too high. And having all this like big stuff for Warlock doesn't really play to its hero power, doesn't play to its strengths. Whereas whatever the Curator is, it's at least a taunt, right? And as the Warlock, that just, like, that's what you need much more often. So,
you guys actually changed this. That's pretty funny.
Well, we got to listen to the Arena God, man.
I mean, you guys saw the Curator. That deck went 12 wins. But it was like something where I feel like 9 mana cards, like you said, specifically in Warlock, just are really bad.
Yeah.
And the tier list at the time didn't seem like take that kind of stuff into account. Other than that, I mean, I see Deathwing at like number 1 on both the tier lists a lot, and I'm like, I feel like I'd take a lot of legendaries over Deathwing.
Yeah.
Just because like I really don't like to play my games that way. I don't know. It's kind of like what Merps was saying earlier, where it's like, as like a good player, you always want choices, right? And it's like Deathwing's kind of like the ultimate no choice card,
right?
But I mean, I could definitely see picking it in certain decks, and I feel like a lot of times your legendary choices are so awful, it's kind of like it's picked for you. But I could definitely see myself picking like going over the rogue tier list right now. Like I could see myself picking like Captain Greenskin over Deathwing, and he's rated quite a bit lower.
Yeah.
It's like just because it's a tempo play, and I feel like the way I lose a lot of my games are you just kind of miss a step. And this was on the old patch, of course, where curving out was a lot more common. But if you're curving out on your opponent and you have the advantage, the main way you lose is you just miss a turn, and suddenly that advantage is kind of gone. So I tended to not. I really tried not to draft expensive cards, even though when you do get to play them in their own scenario, they're very powerful.
Right, and people tend to remember the times in which they drop the Deathwing, they go 12 phase, they crush their opponents, and they don't tend to remember the times in which Deathwing was in their hand from turn 2 and took away an additional option every single turn, which led to a loss, right? Yeah. So I think that's pretty interesting. Also, with the 9 mana card thing, ADWCTA, we've been like, people yelled at us because they thought like Kraken was too low in Warlock,
oh my God.
right?
People yell at us for everything on the tier list, but
Yeah, that's true.
There's always been this strain where people think we rate like the top, the high mana cards too low, especially like the top mana cards, right? No one really complains about, I don't know, what's the 7/7 card? War Golem, right? No one really complains that we rate War Golem too high, but they complain we rate like Krakens and your Bot Creepers and whatever not high enough. Because a lot of the time, especially back in the old meta, we had like just random 2-drops rated higher than any of these valuable cards. It's like Flame Juggler, one of the best cards. You know, Kraken, also really good. And people just look at that and go, no, that can't be right. That's a 2/3 that like barely has an ability and is RNG. Here's like a super overstated card with initiative on top of that. But you just sometimes don't get to, I mean, you usually don't get to turn 9 and have it still be terribly meaningful what you do. Like on turn 9, generally, if you replace Kraken with like a big thing, you've done your job. Like that slot has been filled to the extent that you needed that slot at all. And if you could have played it 2 turns earlier, 3 turns earlier, you would have had the game in the bag even more. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely part of the more aggro mentality, I think, overall than what 7.1 is kind of forcing onto the arena meta. I do think it's interesting, like when you come back into the arena like next month or whatever, like they really moved 7.1 for the arena into an area that feels more constructed to me. Not in that like synergies are all over the place, but just in terms of the pacing, where as long as you're not in constructed, if you're not playing a like aggro deck, which I understand everyone's playing an aggro deck, but before like MSG in constructed, when there was a bit more control kind of going on, that's what arena feels like right now, where you're just kind of like waiting and then you're playing something and then your opponent's playing something and you're responding, and it's an interesting back and forth. And I feel like they moved it that way on purpose for constructive players. So I'm always curious about, and we've had very good feedback. There's like this split in feedback between our like people who watch our stream who are both constructed and arena players who generally are okay or like positive with the 7.1 changes, and like strictly arena players who like almost universally, like 80% of them are like, oh God, what's happened? So I'm very interested in seeing what like constructive players really like think about these changes.
Well, we had a hot form drop by our channel the other night, and he was like, "Oh, I love it. It's like it feels very familiar. It feels good, right?"
Yeah, it feels good. It feels interesting. There's like more things I can do, right? Because he has the removal cards now that he's just used to having.
Man, I love nobody having removal cards. It's just like, go my minions! Like
exactly.
My favorite deck was a rogue deck I went 12 wins with, and I won multiple games by going Shadow Rager and a Mogushan Warden.
And Shadow Rager like, face?
Yeah. I can't deal with it. It's like they can't deal 1 damage past a taunt, and that's just awesome. Like,
and I think that's
something that never happened in the other game mode.
The timing of 7.1 was not a coincidence. Blizzard was just following your games and then tracking how many times your opponent's uninstalled right after the game and saying, oh no, we can't let that happen.
Yeah.
I think that would make Chakki very happy if that came out. If that information came out and his uninstall sort of influence made them change the meta, I think Chakki would just die a happy man right there. But yeah, it's definitely very different, and like I don't know. Like the arena is definitely going to change as well, which
again with Ungoro.
Yeah, and I guess maybe we can talk about that.
Transition.
Oh, fantastic! I know, nailed it. So Ungoro is coming out, and unless you're living under a rock, you've probably been keeping up. Also with the weird videos of Abed.
How is that weird? Those are amazing videos that get my attention from the very first shot and keep it until their 5 minutes are up. I like those videos.
Chakki, what do you think?
I haven't watched either of them. I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
I mean, Chakki is living under a rock.
I see it on Twitter. I'm like, ooh, 5 minutes? No.
Anyways, coming out, we got quests, we got elementals. dinosaurs potentially. Well, we definitely have dinosaurs. It's just how many dinosaurs. But first I wanted Chakki's sort of opinion on just the expansion in general from like a constructed or arena perspective.
I mean, they're definitely like implementing a lot of things at once. There's quests, there's adapt, there's like all these, there's the elemental tribal. It's kind of like the most stuff we've had in a single set, I think, in terms of like mechanics. So, you know, you're kind of like, okay, this could be great. And then you remember that Inspire was a thing and you're like, hopefully it's not one of those. Adapt seems fine. It's just kind of like, I struggle to think of the cards they can really put adapt on to make it cool and not like just overbearing. Like they're either going to print cards like the 5/4 they showed, which are just like, oh, unplayable, right? Very arena card. You're never going to see it constructed. And then you think of like a potential card where it's like 2 mana, 2/3 adapt, and you're like, well, that thing's insane. And it's like, are they going to print anything close to that? Maybe, maybe not. But it's like, that's sort of like the bad way to make the mechanic viable. But it's probably better they do that than make the mechanic not viable, like Inspire. Quests are like honestly the biggest point of intrigue for me, because I know that from like a balance or a game design point of view, rather, that they want to kind of hit every crowd that Hearthstone brings in. And so like, to me, quests seem like something that the more casual crowd would like. Sort of how when they were defending Purify, it was like, well, there's a subgroup of people that really enjoy, like Silence Priest. They enjoy putting all the silence effects and all the big statues in their deck, and when it works, they feel great. And it's like, is that the crowd they're trying to hit with Quest, or are they honestly trying to make this a competitive mechanic? Because honestly, the quests don't look that like great.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And I'm very worried that it's like, if there's a quest that's good competitively, doesn't everyone just play it? And the games are just like quest on one, go, and it's like, I wonder what their deck's gonna try and do. It's gonna try and complete the quest. Like,
yeah. It's one quest per class too, so you just define the whole class the same way MSG does.
It's just like, I don't know. Like, if Death Rattle Priest is good, is the gameplay going to be that great, or is it going to be them going quest, Death Rattle guy, ×7, boom?
Yeah, I think a lot of people on social media were complaining about Blizzard in the past expansion MSG and in this expansion. It seems as though, even though they're giving us a lot of stuff, like you said, certainly more than in past expansions, it seems like they're trying to force classes to play a certain way, right? They're not giving you tools like a sort of a Lego set to put together. They're saying like, no. Like, you are going to make this sort of deck for this sort of class.
They just make the synergies too strong to ignore them. And they print so many different things that there's no choice with it. Like, there's no scarcity. You can just put all the things you want into a deck, more or less. And the whole point of deck building is what can't you fit in the deck. So if you can fit in pretty much all the Jade cards you want, then you have a Jade deck, and then you just put powerful cards in from your class otherwise. But so what I think is really interesting about what you just said, which is that they're kind of picking a direction for each class, and it's limiting the constructed scene. That's actually really good for Arena, I feel. Because Arena always suffers from like everything being the same. Because everything's random, because everything, it used to be Curvestone. Now it's still Curvestone, just starts on 3 now. But you get this problem where everything starts to look and feel very similar. You have a hero power to differentiate you, maybe 1 or 2 like main class cards. The really good players, or like just I guess the good players, will be able to tease out the differences. In Blizzard's mind, the really good players and the hardcore players will be able to tease out the differences, but to everyone else, it's basically the same. And if you just add all these very deck-defining synergies, for example, or like a powerful card that defines where your deck is going, well, now you've just created Arena archetypes that are viable, right? On top of the normal stuff.
Wait, so I'm just gonna fast forward a little bit and just ask you. This would have been the question from the GOAT, but like, so it seems like you would be a fan of quest cards in the Arena.
No, not quest cards. I'm more a fan of things like MSG, like the MSG handbook mechanics. I like elementals. I'm okay with anything basically that'll create new archetypes in the arena, and recognizing that if you're creating something for constructed, like a mechanic that you really want it to be in constructed, and you're sticking it all in one class, or you're like actually creating cards to make synergies with other cards to basically build decks for people.
Yeah.
Then they're going to be able to actually draft those decks with an offering bonus.
Okay.
And when you can do that, then you have something that is very arena friendly, where it is still random, but you can kind of break out of the whole normal mid-range or aggro or control normal arena archetypes and do your like I thought hand buffs were pretty well done for Paladin, right? Like totally changed the class in the arena. I know you hate them because they're playing solitaire, but it's just something totally different. And it works well enough. It's not, devastatingly overpowered. And it creates a new way to draft and new considerations to do. And that's the stuff that, I think is really cool. But going back to your question from the go, and I'll answer this really quickly why I don't think the quest... By the way, we've been having this discussion, and a lot of it has been talking about quests. To our listeners who may have been living under a rock, because they actually, like, Blizzard has not been advertising Ungoro all that much. They've been really quiet about Ungoro compared to other expansions. That's part of their whole new thing, where they don't overhype something. So quests are a legendary card. They're all legendary cards, and that you're guaranteed to get them in your opening hand. And they say something like, quest, play 8 Death Rattle minions, and then after you do that, you get a reward for it, which is always a 5-mana card that is some kind of minion that's ridiculously overpowered.
It's not always a minion, but you get a reward that is OP, and you get like an OP minion, or sometimes like a persistent sort of state.
Yep. And like Chakki said, right? And this is for casual players. Is generally like how. Well, okay. Casual players will really like it. Because this is still a game based in the World of Warcraft. And you know what World of Warcraft has? It has quests.
Thank you for that. Wow.
It's actually kind of a central part of the game. And so this kind of brings the experience here, which I think is cool. And it may convince more WoW people to come. But when it comes to the arena, first of all, if you get a quest card that's able to be offered, that has to be the first card offered to you. Because if you're ever building a deck in Constructed, that will be the first card you put in your deck. If you're trying to build a deck based on it. It's an archetype-defining card. So the first card has to have whatever percentage chance of giving you that. And then once you get that card, all of your other draft picks have to have that particular synergy, whether it's Death Rattle or Battlecry or whatever it is, boosted. I think Shamans is like Murlocs, right? Or something like that? Yeah, Shamans is Murloc.
10.
Yeah.
That's
10 Murlocs. Like, can you imagine if in the arena the first card you're offered has like a 33% chance of being that quest, and if you pick it, all of a sudden your Murloc offering rate skyrocket so that you have a more than reasonable chance of being offered and play 10 Murlocs?
That's a deck that you snipe Crypt with. All right?
Yes.
That would be fantastic. Just like the turn one. Oh, we don't get Tiny Fin anymore.
No, there's no more Tiny Fin.
Never mind. It's not.
Sorry. They're gonna make Tiny Fin the dinosaur, and then we're good.
Okay, all right, but it's not a Murloc anymore, or is it? I don't know.
It could still be a Murloc. Dinosaur isn't actually a tribe. Like, I know people keep talking about dinosaurs like it's a thing. It's not a thing. Dinosaurs are beasts. Bloodfront Raptor is a beast. They're just regular stuff.
Oh man, poor dinos.
Oh god. All right. Well.
Okay, so that's why I'm against putting quests in the arena. I think it's an even better and more obvious move for Blizzard to remove from the arena than even like Cthulhu cards were. Because Cthulhu cards were at least normal, boring curve cards. They just made you feel bad that you were never going to have a Cthulhu.
That's true.
These cards are actually just like horrible in the arena.
That's true. And Blizzard, if there is anything they were consistent with, they don't want the player to feel bad, right?
Yeah.
Well, unless they move to like 3 Firelands portals in a row. But Chakki, do you think quest cards should be in the arena?
No, not really. I think it's kind of like ADWCTA said, like it's really tough to implement. Because you have to do what he kind of said, and then it's like, also, what do you offer besides the quests? Is it just legendaries? So you got first pick legendary. It's like a lot of the time you're just gonna be like, yeah, I'll just take the legendary,
right?
Because remember, the quests, like, it's actually actively very, very bad if you don't actually have the quest cards, because you always get it in your mulligan. So you miss out on seeing an extra mulligan card, which is huge. Like, bad players might not realize that, but, like, that's an insane percent of games you're, like, losing because of that.
Yep.
So not only do you have to, like, go through all these hoops to make it viable to actually draft like that, you have to offer it in the draft. Bad players are going to pick it and then feel bad because they didn't finish it, or, like, because you never realistically, even if you draft enough to do the quest, say you draft like 12 Murlocs, how often do you draw 10 of them? Like,
Right.
you know, and so it just feasibly can't be done. Yeah, I just don't think they could do it at all.
Yeah, it'll definitely be tough. Like, one of the arguments I heard was just like, well, increase the offering rate for the quest, you know, sort of like whatever you need for the quest for this one expansion, because they're like, with the offering bonus, they basically, Blizzard just sets the meta anyways. But I'm not personally a fan of it either. I think it'd be interesting. It would definitely, you know, you definitely have more trolling moments from the arena, which I don't think, God, with how the meta is right now, though, I don't need more craziness. Just get me back to that, like, good old, like, curve stone mid-range, like my Yeti versus your Yeti, and you know, let's just go. And at a certain point, I hit your face, and we'll see if you have the time.
At a certain point, you mean turn 2?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
that certain point that every game reaches, turn 2.
Yeah, well, that's how I play. That's how I play Hunter. Alley Cat into Trog Beast Rager into Rat Pack, and just like whatever you got. If I can't, you know, if I can't click your face, I guess I have to click the taunt. But the face is coming right after that. Yeah. So another thing that was introduced in the expansion, this idea of elementals.
Yeah, I was about to say, okay, adapt is fine, but it's generally just like a normal minion, right? Like, you get to have a slight pick in which direction it goes.
Adapt
Quests are theoretical. They're not going to be in the arena, realistically.
Yeah.
If only because Blizzard, it would take too much work for Blizzard to make them in the arena. Even if it were a good idea, I don't think it would end up in the arena. But, like, elementals are actually a thing. Like, I think elementals are, like, the real thing that's going to, like, heavily impact the arena, and probably also constructed, too. Because there's so many existing cards that are elementals that you don't even think about.
Magma Rager.
Okay, I think that's the one elemental that's existing in the game that everyone does think about.
That's true. They think about it, whether or not they play it. But yeah, no, I think Adapt is purely like the arena edition, right? It's like Chakki said, unless they do something different with Adapt cards sort of operate within themselves, which means it can never be as powerful as a card that synergizes with the rest of your deck. Like, I can't think of anything.
Yeah, like Adapt is the fun way for them to introduce more Yetis into the game.
Yeah. Essentially. Sometimes you have a Yeti, sometimes you have Wind Fury Harpy. It's all, who doesn't want more Wind Fury Harpies, right? But Chakki, so what do you think of Elemental so far from both like arena and constructed?
And constructed seems kind of scary. Like, I mean, it's another one of those things where it's like, it's either going to be like so backbreakingly strong that you're just going to like feel terrible. You're just like, and the thing is, it's like a snowball effect too, right? It's like you have to play an elemental to activate your elemental. So it's like it happens turn after turn. They never really want to drop the combo. I think it's kind of a cool new mechanic, though. Like you had to have played it last turn. It sort of opens up the door for like when they do not play an elemental. Finally, you're like, okay, well, I know that's not active next turn. Maybe now you can like go in or something. But I haven't really thought about it too much in an arena sense. I felt like synergies were like way too hard to draft in arena, like in this past meta, where like if you drafted priest and you like, obviously you always take like Draconid Operative, but sometimes you get offered like Wormrest Agent and you're like, okay, you know, what are the odds this guy's active onto? They're very low. Like you barely get offered any dragons. They all kind of suck, and you take them anyway for your stupid synergy. And it's like, because the other thing is, it's like, you might get offered enough dragons, but you also have to take into consideration what happens when you get Volcanic Dragon or Volcanic Drake, and Cabal Talon Priest in the same pick.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to take the Cabal Talon Priest. So it's like you have to think about how many synergy cards you're going to get that are the best picks still, and that's a really low number. So I don't expect elementals to like be that strong for maybe anything but like Shaman. Obviously, we haven't seen all the mage cards, and those are kind of the two main elemental classes, but they've revealed some Shaman ones, and like it might work for them because they have a lot of like class elemental cards.
Yeah. So they're focusing elementals on like some mage and shaman. There was one more. Was it warlock? They said they made one more. Was
Wait,
it
they did? I thought it was just those two.
Just mage and shaman. Okay, I thought they had 3 classes. And the other one was a what do you call it, like a potion class from MSG as well. But okay, maybe not priest warlock. Maybe I am just saying random things.
Yep.
Merps is used to me just saying random things.
Oh my god.
But
go on.
Either way, it's only affecting like a very small portion of the classes, which means it's affecting a small portion of the arena, even if it is a thing. And even if it is a thing, they can only print so many cards. So it's going to be like a Jade thing at its worst, like at its absolute like most, oh look, there's so many of these here. It's going to be kind of like Jade, maybe like a one step up from Jade in terms of commonality. And unlike Jade, you don't just get to stack it, right? You have to play the turn before. So if you're a listener and you have no idea what we're talking about because you don't know what elementals are, besides like the card is an elemental, the way the synergy works is rather than like, let's say beasts, right? If you have a beast on the board, do this. Or dragons. If you have a dragon in your hand, do this. For elementals, it's if you have played an elemental the turn before, or sometimes even based on the number of elementals that you played the turn before, you get this effect. So like an example, this is a common card, common rare card. You're going to see this in the arena a lot, and you'll see why. It's Tovir Stoneshaper, Battlecry. If you played an elemental last turn, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. So
would you like to give them the mana cost and the stats with it? I think that would...
I'm looking at this card right now, but they are not. That's a very good observation.
That's
so it's
good.
a 4 mana 3/5, and that's why you'll see it a lot because it's normally kind of okay-ish statted. And if you have any elementals in your deck at all, that can be played on turn 3, or like even later in the game, right? You play it on turn 9, and then you play the Tovir Stoneshaper later on. You get insane value, right? What's a 3/4 taunt with Divine Shield normally costs 5 mana. This is
Psychotron?
a 3/5.
Yes.
Yeah, Psychotron. This is a 3/5, so it's going to cost like, I don't know, 5.5 mana or something like that, and it's only 4 mana. So to the extent that you have some elementals in your deck, and there are neutral elementals, right? Frost elementals and elemental, like light spawn.
Yeah, and like obviously all the 3-drops, the bad ones, but
yeah,
right.
right.
Ice Rager's kind of pickable. Like
Yes.
Yeah. In the arena, Ice Rager's like a normal-ish kind of 3-drop.
Yeah.
So there's pickable cards to back this up, and that's the neutral one. The other one that they revealed, these are the only non-legendary ones they've revealed, is Stone Sentinel, and this will give you an idea of the potential power of elemental. So Stone Sentinel is a epic card, Shaman, 7 mana 4/4 elemental, Battle Cry. If you played an elemental last turn, summon 2/3 elementals with taunt. So you get a free Spirit Wolves, which is normally like 5 mana, like after you factor in the overload. So,
yeah, but the card's a 4/4 itself, so it's like not completely free, but yeah, it's really good, obviously.
If you can pull it off. And by turn 7, almost any elemental you have in your hand you can play. So on turn 6, you play a Fire Elemental. I think that's what it's designed for, being Shaman. And then on turn 7, you play a Stone Sentinel, and you kind of power out a bit more. So that's the elementals and what they've shown us so far.
Yeah, the problem I have with elementals, and obviously, look, we haven't seen all of the cards yet, right? So I just don't like the potential for... I see it as a potential problem in the arena. Just like, I don't... what was it? The 4 mana 3/5 minion that gains Taunt and Divine Shield. Like, I think that's just too much stats, and it places more emphasis on, like, did you get these cards in your draft? And if so, you just get more stats. Like, and there's not much the opponent can do about it. They can sort of anticipate and say, like, oh, I think a 3/5 Taunt Divine Shield is coming out on turn 4.
Well,
and it's like,
if someone plays an elemental on turn 3, you're on alert, right? That's a common. Rare cards are basically common now, so that's a common card in the arena now with a offering bonus for the set. Like, you're playing around that card.
Yeah,
but like, how do you play around that?
Right.
On turn 4. See, I really like the Shaman one, like the 7 mana card, because like, say your opponent fire leaves you on 6, suddenly you kind of have info that they might be playing the Feral Spirit guy on 7, and you can actually set up against that. You can play like multiple minions instead of one big minion. But the 3/5 guy has issues because it's like, it's draftable on its own. It's fine. And there's really nothing you can do on turn 3 to play around that. Like, what are you going to do? Hold your Blood Knight, hopefully? Wow. Congrats.
That's the problem that I see with it. Like, on turn 4, it's just super overstated. Like, Tazdingo is already a pretty freaking good 4-drop, and this thing has a Divine Shield. You're just powering out like a slightly smaller Sunwalker 2 turns earlier. That's it's just so insane. And look, this might be the only card that I see as a problem, but with the offering rate to all elementals and with sort of your real inability to act, I don't like it. You know, I'm very sort of fearful of the potential of these elementals.
Are they giving an offering rate to all the elementals, including the old ones? Or
No, just the new set. At least that's what they've historically done. At this point, I have no idea what Blizzard's going to do with offering rates.
No, they'll just give a 3,000% offering bonus to Magma Rager and the other Ragers. I think that's what will make you come back, Chakki.
Yeah, Magma Rager meta.
I have yet to get a 12 win with Magma Rager. I've tried it a number of times into decks where I thought like the pick was like so bad that it didn't matter, but not a single time. I've probably gotten 12 wins with like every classic card except Magma Rager at this point.
No. What about like Ancestor's Call?
That's not a classic card.
Oh, classic card.
Classic
Sorry,
card.
classic
Yeah.
card. I thought you said class card. I was
no,
what?
classic card. Because they've been around the longest, you know? So I've had more chances to do that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I mean, I'm glad they're giving Magma Rager its moment. I hope there's a card that's like just designed for a 2-card synergy that people would play in Constructed. Just to tell people, like, hey, Magma Rager, it's here now. This is your moment.
I will wait for that day. I mean, we had didn't someone almost bring Noggenfogger to the Bahamas or something? Like, I sort of check up with Constructed. It didn't happen in the end, right?
No.
Terrible.
He didn't even bring that deck.
Ugh. That's so sad. I mean, I'm probably just gonna watch it anyways because I basically watch all the Constructed tournaments, but I would have wanted to see Noggenfogger in there for the shenanigans.
Yeah, I actually I'm friends with them, and he was like in a Skype chat. He's like, I'm literally having nightmares about it being the reason, about Noggenfogger being the reason why he would lose, and he's like, I can't do it. I'm like, oh my god, he bamboozled us, dude.
Dude, what about the situations in which you'd win off Noggenfogger?
Right. If you win off that card, you're just a living legend forever. I don't know. If you're gonna tweet it, I feel like you have to go through with it, but I would never tweet it in the first place.
It was a Green Sheep, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I think that so ADWCTA, you know, we're doing the card reviews later on, so I don't think we need to go too in depth with this stuff. Did you want to move on to card good bad?
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do card good bad, where we tell you whether a card is good or bad. And we asked Chakki what card he wanted to talk about. Like, just any card, right? There are like 1,000 cards in the game right now. What card do you want to talk about? And the first response is a card we've done already. And not only have we done this already, but also when we had Ratsma on like 2-3 months ago, that was the card he wanted to talk about as well. So it's just a card that good players are really interested in and all want to talk about. And it is the Unlicensed Apothecary. 3 mana, 5/5 demon. Whenever you summon a minion, deal 5 damage to your hero. It's an epic card, so in 7.1 you actually see it a lot.
Yeah.
We rate it pretty highly, like a 131, which on this new scale. If you didn't know, we changed the tier list to recenter on 100, and that doubled everything. So it goes more minute, so you can see like the difference between like a 99 and a 100 where you couldn't before. But it also made numbers bigger, which feels better too. So unlicensed apothecary, we have rated pretty high, I think. Like, if I were to move it, it would definitely be down and not up. But what do you think about the card? How good is it? Is it even better than average? It's one of those cards where it's entirely possible it's not even better than like an average card.
Yeah, I feel like I'd take a lot of epics before I'd take Unlicensed Apothecary. On the last patch, it was like I drafted it twice, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I went 5 and 4 total in the games I played it, which is like pretty below average, especially for the class Warlock.
Mm-hmm.
So like I had a negative experience with it. I felt like when my opponents played it, I had a really easy time winning. It's definitely a card where like it sort of changes how you're gonna play, whether it's played against you or you play it. And I guess it got a little easier to play around with now that you get more spells, but at the same time, like, it kind of goes against everything I try and do, which is just play a bunch of minions. So personally, I just do not like the card. I'm like looking at the tier list now, like, there's a lot of these epics I would take before I would take an unlicensed apothecary.
Yeah, we have this rated very, very high, and I'm very aware that this is probably higher than where most people would take it. Like, we have it above NCT, above Earth Ring Farseer, not even in Epics. Like, this is one of the best 3-drops. It's not premium, but it's in the level right below that for us. And you're right, like, it changes the way everything's played. It's like Ventrico, right? Like, once you play it, your game's different, your opponent's game is different. You have determined what's about to happen. So one of the things that I do like about this card is that you don't have to play it at all. Like, you kind of have to on turn 3 if that's your like 3-drop, but that's also super powerful if you get to play it on turn 3. I don't think you're terribly upset about that. But if it's later on, you're a Warlock, you can hero power. It's bad to not be able to play a card, but sometimes you can't, right? Like, sometimes this is just a dead card in your hand because of your health situation, or because you have 10 mana and a bunch of small cards in your hand, and you're just not going to be able to get this out and be sure you can kill it off the next turn, and you don't want to you don't want to make yourself unable to play cards. So the option to not play it, I think, is... it's a weird way to think about it.
You have an option to not play anything.
Yeah.
What?
What a special characteristic that is unique to this card. Fantastic, man. I think so. You know, people have been tweeting at me, and people have been commenting about this card. I think this card is a little bit better in this meta, not only because you have more spells in this meta, but because Warlock is just not as good anymore. Like before, why would you risk it, right? I remember I've won so many games against Warlock where they put it down, and then I have like little stuff, and they're expecting me to trade my 3/2 and my 2/3 into it because I'm like, oh no, 5/5, and I'm just like, no, I'm just gonna play my doppelgangster and then go face play minions. And this was last month, so this is before every Warlock had like a bazillion AoEs, and they couldn't do anything. Or there'd be times in which they set up the trade, so it's like my 2/3 up against he bumped it, so it's like a 5/2, and then I would just like Gadget Dance, Social Light, and heal it up, and then play small stuff. And then he's like, okay, well, you win this time. So it's definitely like, you can put them in this position, and they're sitting there with like 3 Abyssal Enforcers, because that's how the old meta was, right? Like they sit there with 3 Abyssal Enforcers and Blast Crystals, and they beat you every other way. Like their deck was so good, but this card loses it for them, right? Like
potentially, it's a lost condition.
Right, it's a lost condition.
One of those rare cards that is the lost condition.
In the best class in the game was the big thing. It's like, I don't know. I would... Like, if I had to put it in one of these categories on the tier list, honestly, I'd probably throw it... I guess I'd put it in below average and not bad. Like, I'm putting it around the same place as Wind Up Burglebot.
Oh, man. Oh. That Warlock Wind Up Burglebot.
I drafted it twice. I just really wasn't happy when I had to draft it.
Yeah. No,
I would take a 3-mana 3/3 over this any day.
No.
I think in the old meta that was definitely correct. Now we're like other classes just have tons of stuff. Warlock lost some power cards. They also lost like the Abyssal Enforcer offering bonus. They can't cheese out wins anymore with Void Caller. That card alone, Void Caller.
Oh, that card was insane.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I would just keep it every game. I'm like, well, I got 2 demons. I can draw them.
It's just the potential to win on turn 4 or 5 or whenever you can
Right.
kill it off. I mean, the thing with Unlicensed Apothecary is because Flame Imp is a pretty good card, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, everyone thinks Flame Imp is somewhere between pretty good to really good. I don't think it's really good,
Right.
but it's a pretty good card. So Unlicensed Apothecary's penalty to your health compared to its stats is like literally the same as a Flame Imp.
Yeah, but
If it gets hurt once, right? So if you have to
Right.
summon a minion on the next turn and you can't kill this off, and you can just summon one minion, you don't need to summon multiple minions, then it's a Flame Imp. If you can kill it off, then it's a free stats and obviously very good. And if you have to summon 2 minions, then there's a huge freaking cost and it's awful, and you would probably not want to do that rather than take the health penalty. So that's kind of where this card like lives, right? Like you play it, you better have a damn good next turn that uses up all or most of your mana that only plays 1 minion, because you can never guarantee that it dies. And then if your opponent keeps it alive and the next turn it trades into something smaller presumably, and then you get it to the health range in which you can actually kill it off the next turn on basically anything. And there's no more Annoyotron in the meta. Oh, thank God. I haven't thought about how much I'm not annoyed by Annoyotron since 7.1 came out. But now that I think back on it, that has been a huge quality of life upgrade.
Annoyotron. How many times have I pushed like 12 plus damage into a single Annoyotron?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of like the calculation you're doing in your head when you're playing Unlicensed Apothecary on like any turn besides 3. I mean, it's a very interesting card. It's a very interesting card.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like the most controversial card that came up because Twitch chat just could not decide if it was good or bad.
And Twitch chat can always decide whether something's good or bad.
They always have an opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's and this is a card in which even if you ask sort of people play Hearthstone a lot, like a lot of it's like, well, it depends, and then some people will be really strongly for it, some will be really strongly against it, and it really is just because a lot of epic stories are created with this one card, whether you have it, and even if it just gets its original value, like a 3-mana 5/5, that's game winning by itself, right? Or you just lose the game and it has that Fell Reaver effect where they just keep on freezing it over and over, and they
Can you Hungry Dragon this thing?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You can Hungry Dragon this thing with your opponent?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
You didn't see
Leroy
that-
it. You
didn't see the Trollden thing with Leroy?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't see that. Oh, that'd be awesome. I think
It's
there
like-
needs to be more things like that give your opponent minions. I really like that mechanic. I don't know, random thought. Totally random thought, Blizzard. Make it happen. Ungoro. Now.
You just want the MCT. It's like Hungry Dragon into MCT.
Yes, that's such a good combo.
My God. Anyways, I think, Chakki, do you have any more input on this card, or is that it?
I don't like it.
I heard
Excellent.
wind up Burglebot, and that's all I needed to hear about how much you don't like this card.
Yeah, I definitely don't like Wind Up Burglebot either.
Well, you know what, Chakki? You are definitely an arena player. When we're talking about wind up Burglebot, like this is an arena conversation right here. All right.
I actually I really loved playing Hearthstone with bad cards. Like it's like it takes me back to like the early days. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think there you go. Look, Chakki says it's fun. If any of you, no constructed players probably listen to this.
That would be
What am I
really
saying?
weird if you're a constructive player and you're just listening to an arena-only podcast.
We need to take out like a billboard or something, like advertising. Look, Chakki thinks arena is fun. All of you guys should play it as well.
Yeah.
But
You just gotta talk to all your constructed friends and get the movement going of people trying out for this leaderboard. Be like,
Yeah.
hey, look at my score. What, you think you can beat it? No, I'm just way better than you. What?
I remember, I think it was at BlizzCon, and it was during one of those events, and I got to meet a lot of constructed players. I met like Osaka, I met Frozen, very nice guy, and they're like, "Oh, you're the guy who plays Arena." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Do you play Arena?" They're like, "No." It's like, "What?" They made that face. It's just kind of like, "What? Like, what?
Like,
why would you even
yeah,
ask that?"
yeah, right. Like, this is not what we're here for. What are you talking about?
Oh God. Well, Chakki, thanks for giving us a semblance of legitimacy and then coming in and crushing us so that we look foolish. We appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
So Chakki, before we end this, if we want to see more of you, if we want more of your content, where can we find
If
you?
we want to spam your Twitch chat to say more Arena from Chakki, where do we go?
It's all at Chakki_HS, Twitter, Twitch, all that. Yeah, I'll probably be streaming, probably constructed in the near future, but maybe once Ungoro's out, we'll hit up the Arena again.
Yeah,
There you go.
There we go. Now we should raid Chakki's Twitch stream and just type Arena. Spam, wall of spam.
All my viewers want Arena now. It's like it's a lot more fun to watch, honestly. Like wacky stuff happens on the regular.
Oh yeah, 7.1. You ain't seen nothing yet about wacky stuff in Arena. Blizzard basically said, "All right, we're just gonna make this ridiculous," and it is now. So okay, that's Chakki, Chakki, for our listeners who aren't looking at this.
Very true. Spelling.
Yeah, and for our viewers who are watching this on YouTube, it is not Merps. I know the window says Merps, but it is Chakki.
Hopefully they can tell the difference between the two of us. I don't know. I mean, Chakki, I guess if we were out on the street together, people would consider us identical twins. Not too much of a stretch, but hopefully all of you astute viewers on YouTube can tell us apart. So thank you. Anyways, Chakki, this is amazing. Thanks for giving us so much of your time. Congrats once again. We look forward to you coming back in the coming months and whipping us and showing us that we truly don't know what we're talking about. Thank you.